Welcome to Believing the Word with author and pastor Dan Shunk. This program is a ministry of Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Here's what's coming up in today's message.
If you've never been offered the greatest of bribe or the biggest of consequence, you can't know 100% fully the level of your commitment. Now here's what's cool. Oh, there's a punchline. Jesus Christ was offered the greatest of bribes and the greatest of threats and endured both, proving his commitment to us. He was offered the entire world at the temptation of Satan. Satan said, I will give you everything. You don't have to go to that cross. And he had it to give. It was a real offer of everything. And Christ said, no, I won't take your bribe. That's commitment.
Today in the book of Daniel, we are presented with the question every believer must answer. Is your faith a conviction or just a convenient fiction? When prayer became illegal, Daniel didn't change his habits. He trusted God, even if it meant the lion's den. In Daniel chapter 6, we discover that genuine conviction stands firm under pressure, and that God still honors those who remain faithful when faith comes at a cost. Now here's Pastor Dan in the book of Daniel as he continues his message, Conviction of Fiction.
An overseer then must be above reproach. Not able to be reproached is the idea. And then it goes on to give more qualifications. The husband of one wife, temperate, sensible, respectable, hospitable, apt to teach, and all these things. But one of the things that a leader should strive for, we want to be leaders. We want to be seen as, hey, follow me, I'll lead you to Christ, right? We want to be above reproach. We want to be people that you can't complain about. That we're doing everything we can to try to live a sincere, honest life. How about this one here, how Paul wrote to the Thessalonians? Very simple and easy. Abstain from every form of evil. In another place, he says even to avoid the appearance of evil. Just stay away from it. Don't let it even be something that they can accuse you of. The other day we have, the one of those travel apps where we can know where all the family is at any given moment, on the phones and stuff. So we could, I need help from somebody. Where are they? Oh, they're at this place. So I can call them and say, can you go to the store and get me something? It's easy to find everybody, right? So the other day, one of the kids looked at me and they're like, I don't remember what it was. It was something like they were like, why were you at the tobacco store or something? And I was like, what? Because the dot's not always perfect on these apps, right? And so it looked like I was at I don't even remember yell it out if you remember what it was. But it looked like I was at some trash store. And I was like, no, I was next door, at this place. So it wasn't even a tobacco store. What was it? Do you remember? Oh, it was something. That's okay. We'll let it go. But think whatever the worst thing is in Chambersburg, it was probably that. They're like, why were you there? And I was like, I was not there. I was next door, But the point of avoid the appearance of evil, right? Like that's what the scriptures tell us. Don't even make it look like you did something wrong. So I was quick to clean that up, that I was not there. I'll have to remember what that place was afterwards. So think of his lifestyle here. They're looking for something to complain about and they can't find it. Man, wouldn't that be awesome if people could say that about us? They're looking for something to complain about and they just couldn't find it. So they're angry anyway. Why do you think they're angry? If he's doing nothing corrupt in his job, why are they angry? Why are they upset? It's nothing but personal ambition. It's nothing but they want to go up and they want him to go down. Sometimes it's a matter of the Christian makes everybody else look bad just because of who they are. Doesn't it say in Romans chapter 11, I think it's Romans 11, verse 11, that as the church, we should be provoking Israel to jealousy, right? And sometimes that jealousy would be like, oh, wow, the way they're experiencing Christ, the way they know Christ, I want that. But sometimes that provoking to jealousy is going to make them hate you. It's going to make them feel bad. And they will take it in a negative way. So this is a natural result of living an incorruptible lifestyle, that people get jealous. And here they are angry about this. But if somebody's going to get angry with us, let them be angry because we're standing for the Lord. And not because we're taking some dumb stand on something we don't have to. Let that be the reason why that they get upset. And that's why they're upset with Daniel. because he is living above reproach. What a testimony. What a great testimony. Now, verse 5. Verse 5, we continue to our next point. So, number one is we need to bring the Lord into our religious and secular lives. That's a mark of commitment. But now here, starting in verse 5, here's another mark of commitment. It's that we know how to choose between conflicting priorities. When two things come up and you can't do both, do you have the ability to know which one God would want you to do? Have you ever faced that problem? I think we all do, right? Well, here it happens in this account right here. Let's pick it up in verse 5. Then these men said, "We will not find any grounds of accusation against Daniel unless we find it against him with regards to the law of his God." There you go. If they can't get him to sin against God or man, then all they have to do is get the priorities to conflict, to get God and man to disagree. And that's exactly what they're going to attempt to do. Didn't they try the same thing against Jesus in the New Testament? Do you remember one of the times they tried that was the taxes example? They're like, well, let's see. So we're not going to be able to get him to say anything bad about the law. So let's try to make the law of the Romans that we're under conflict with the law of God. And so they brought up the tax example, right? And we won't go through all that right now. You can go take a look at that later on. I'll give you just a little short part of it, though. Maybe that's the punchline of it. Okay. They say to him, "Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But he knew they were trying to trick him in conflicting priorities. So he perceived their craftiness and he said to them, "Well, show me a coin, a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have?" And they said, "It's Caesar's." And he said to them, "Then give to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and give to God the things that belong to God." What did he do? He said, they don't conflict at all. They don't conflict at all. I can do both. We can do all of it. I think too many times we come up with these strange things where I have to stand for God. Well, no, maybe you can do both. Maybe you can do both. Ask that question first. Oh, now there are times, and we see them in the scriptures, when you do not have the ability to obey man, because if you did, it would violate the commandment of God. If that happens, then you know what you have to do. And certainly that's going to happen to Daniel coming up right now. I believe Satan loves scheduling sporting events on Sundays. I think he loves it. I know how I'll get him. I'll put all the fun stuff on Sundays. I think it's on purpose. I really do. I really do. It causes people to check their priorities and find out where they're at. Now, look, I hope you know me well enough that I'm not making legalistic rules about things. You understand that. But I will also tell you, I believe Satan loves to put sporting events on Sundays. I think it's on purpose. So let's continue here. Verse 6. Verse 6. Then these commissioners and the satraps, they came by agreement to the king and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever." So they're buttering him up. In verse 7, all the commissioners of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the high officials and the governors, they have counseled together that the king should establish a statute and enforce an injunction that anyone who seeks to make a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days shall be cast into the lion's den. So here is the specific conflict that they come up with. They create this intentionally, that everyone can only pray to the king. That's all they can do. How do you think they likely sold this to King Darius? Oh, it's not about not praising other gods, King Darius. It's just about, we just think you deserve more attention. What king is going to say no to that? Of course, the king's going to be like, yeah, sounds good. I think people should, recognize my accomplishments, And they played right into his pride and arrogance. They didn't care. By the way, did they care about the people lauding the king? They didn't care about that at all. That's not their intentions at all. What deception they're using here is so disingenuous. They're trying to use the king as a pawn. They have no interest in elevating him. They have every interest in simply trapping Daniel. What a shame. What a lie. Verse 8, now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the written document so that it might not be changed according to the law of the Medo-Persians, which may not be revoked. Therefore, in verse 9, King Darius signed the written document, that is the injunction. And this is what we've alluded to so many times, that this was a standard for this kingdom of the Medo-Persians. When they made a law, they could not change that law. Do you remember this happened one other time? It's after this account here with Daniel, chronologically in time. It happened with Esther, and specifically in Esther chapter 8, verse 5 and verse 8. Haman asked for the king to allow for a certain people to be destroyed. He didn't tell the king that it was the Jews, by which his bride was one. He didn't tell the king that. He just said, look, there's a people that are heinous, and I think they need to be killed. And the king's like, yeah, do whatever you think is right then. And so they passed that law that all Jews should be wiped out and massacred. Would have been the first Holocaust, or not, well, one of the first Holocausts. And so how did they fix that? When that plot was discovered by Mordecai, who passed it on to Esther, and then Esther famously had to go in before the king, and the king received her, and the king agreed with her. But they said, I can't change the law. It's already made. It's already established. There's nothing I can do. And what did they do? What was the solution in that case? Do you remember? They said there, we need to establish a new law. On the day that it's established that the Jews are to be murdered, we're going to equip the Jews all around the world to defend themselves. We're going to give them the right and the privilege and the implements to defend themselves. And so they were ready, and they knew all about it. And so just an example that they didn't have the ability just to say, let's rescind that last law. Let's not murder the Jews. They simply had to pass another law to change it and to make it better. And so that's what they did. And so again, this is how this foreshadows the coming of the everlasting state, that once a law is in place, there it is. And of course, when King Jesus makes a law, he's never going to have to make another law to fix it up. Once he makes a law, it's going to be good and perfect and wonderful. All right, let's continue now, verse 10. And so they established this law that no one can pray to anybody except for the king for 30 days. We go to the verse 10. It brings us to our third of 4 points for tonight. Here's another way we can know if we truly have the commitment that we think we do. We can know we're committed because we have grown accustomed to a routine that might very well cost us something. The routine of your life, the established pattern of your life is such that you're like, this is just my pattern. This is what I do. If it offends you, sorry. If it makes me not be able to have some kind of worldly fun because I'm already committed to this, okay. I have my routine. I know what the Lord wants from me. And if it costs me, it costs me. It's my life. That's a mark of commitment. Right? I remember my pastor in Maine one time told the story of when the first time he had to explain to his young son why he pulled him out of a baseball game. Because it was, I think, Sunday afternoon baseball, and the game went into way into extra innings or something. And he had to go to the coach and say, remember I told you about this at the beginning of the season, this might happen? Yeah, my son's leaving right now, in the middle of the game. Pulled him right off the field to get to a spiritual commitment that they had to go to. And that they already had it established. This was our routine. The coach was shocked. And he had to remind the coach, no, I told you about this at the beginning of the season. Didn't think it was going to happen because of the schedule, but it did. He already had it planted. This is who I am. And this is what we're going to see out of Daniel here. Verse 10. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing document was signed, he entered into his house. Now, in his roof chamber, he had windows open towards Jerusalem. And he continued kneeling on his, I love that word continued. He continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God, as he had been doing previously. Verse 11, then these men came by agreement, and they found Daniel seeking to make petition and making supplication before his God. Yeah, of course they found him. They were looking for him. This really is a lot like Peter and John at the temple. Daniel did this knowingly, right? They told Peter and John at the temple, stop preaching, or you're going to jail. And it's the same with Daniel. Stop worshiping your God, or you're going to die. They did it knowingly, but there's nothing indicating that they did it cocky. There's a difference. They're like, this is my life. This is what I'm doing. Same with Daniel. There's no indication that Daniel didn't fly open the windows and say, you guys be here tonight because I'm going to be praying. I don't care what you say. There's no indication of any of this kind of extras. It's just he continues the routine. This is just who I am. I've already have it established in my heart. Do we have that? Do we have established routines? Or do we intentionally fit our schedules around when it's convenient? Which do we do? Do we read our Bible or only when there's time? Do we have a routine for giving to the Lord or just when there's extra? Do we talk to unbelievers about our good God or only when they approach me? This is a real challenge. Is there any forethought to our relationship with the Lord? That's really the question here. A conviction is a priority that cannot be broken. Did you hear that? That's an interesting way of thinking about it. A conviction is a priority that cannot be broken. I didn't say it might be able to be broken if there was strong enough force. It's a principle, it's a stand, it's a routine, it's a schedule, it's a habit that cannot be broken. Cannot be broken. There's an interesting story I heard. A man asked a woman, prepare your delicate ears. A man asked a woman, will you sleep with me for $1 million? And she said, well, for $1 million, I tell you what. Okay. And he said, okay, well, would you sleep with me for $10? And she said, who do you take me for? And he said, well, we've already established what I take you for. We're just negotiating the price. Do you get the point? If she has a conviction, but only up to a certain point, it's no conviction at all. She has no dedication. I don't know, in the fake story, I don't know if she's married or not, but she has no dedication to godly principles with her body if she doesn't have that principle to the nth degree. And it's the same for us. This isn't for free. I'm going to give you a little side note. I hope you like this one. This is for free on the same subject of commitment. Think about this. Unless you're offered the greatest of bribe, you'll never truly know 100% if your commitment was real, will you? You've never been offered an enormous bribe, but think about the opposite. If you've never been asked to suffer the greatest of loss, you may not know if that commitment is real. I will, prepare your delicate ears, I will murder your children unless you X, Y, or Z, right? If you've never been offered the greatest of bribe or the biggest of consequence, you can't know 100% fully the level of your commitment. Now, here's what's cool. Oh, there's a punchline. Jesus Christ was offered the greatest of bribes and the greatest of threats and endured both, proving his commitment to us. He was offered the entire world at the temptation of Satan. Satan said, I will give you everything. You don't have to go to that cross. And he had it to give. It was a real offer of everything. And Christ said, no, I won't take your bribe. That's commitment. And then he knew that he was going to have to suffer the greatest of deaths to keep his commitment. And he did. If there's one person that you should never doubt if their commitment to you is real, it's Jesus Christ. That one was for free. All right, let's go on, because I can't do that one anymore. If our commitment to Christ can be broken at any price, is it really even commitment? Is it? Verse 12. Then they came near and they said before the king concerning the king's injunction, did you not sign an injunction that any man who seeks to make a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days is to be cast into the lion's den? The king answered and said, yeah, the word is certain according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked. Then in verse 13, they answered and they said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the injunction which you signed, but keeps seeking to make his petition 3 times a day. In verse 14, then as soon as the king heard this word, he was greatly distressed. Did you notice the word distressed? It doesn't say the king was greatly angered. We'll get to that later. It says he was distressed within himself. And he set his mind on saving Daniel. And even until sunset, he kept exerting himself to deliver him. What? What does this speak of? This speaks of the fact that there was a relationship between Daniel and the king already. This is only a few years, a matter of 1, 2, or 3 years from the time Darius becomes king until this happens. And there's already this great affection that Darius has. Darius has already found an extraordinary spirit in Daniel. He's already distinguished himself and set himself apart to the extent that the king doesn't want to lose him. What a winsome attitude he must have had towards the people around him. So Darius sought to save Daniel, but he couldn't. What a relationship he already had. Verse 15, then these men came by agreement to the king, and they said to the king, know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or statute which the king establishes may be changed. And now they're just ringing it in like, king, come on, you got to pull the punishment here. You can't just delay. You can't dawdle. You got to do this. The king is trapped. But he's trapped by his own prideful words, right? That's how this happened in the first place. Oh, it was the deceit of these rulers. But it was the king's pride that allowed this law to even get established. And so he really fell for his own pride. We would never do such a thing. Have you ever made a dumb decision and you're like, oh, that was just my pride speaking? Remember Jephthah? The story of Jephthah and the judges? Lord, I'm so excited right now. I'll give you the first thing that comes out of my house door. It's his daughter that comes out. The pride to make that vow. How about Herod? Herod Antipas, right? In the days of John the Baptist, he didn't want to kill John the Baptist, not because he cared for John the Baptist. He didn't want to kill John the Baptist because he was a political leader and he's trying to be all political and not tick anybody off. He didn't want to make the Jews mad. He didn't want to kill John the Baptist, but he got all infatuated with his daughter that wasn't his daughter. Leave that alone for now. And said, I'll give you anything you want. And that's how he fell for it, because of the pride of his own dumb decisions. Well, there's a lesson there. It's a side note for tonight, but boy, is that a lesson. Pride can make you go places you never intended to go. It'll make you make vows and statements that you never should make. Be careful. Pride will make you have a child that you never wanted to have. All you wanted was some love and affection, right? Pride will make you have a broken bone when all you wanted to do was show them you could lift those weights or move that thing or tote that barge or whatever. You know, man, the things pride has gotten me into. Right now, you're thinking of the things pride's gotten you into too, I'll bet, huh? Yeah. Oh, man, our lips. Verse 16. Well, this brings us to our fourth and final point here, really, in verse 16, how he's going to get to save him. Here's the last mark of how we can know of whether or not we're committed. You know we're committed because we handle the emotional upheaval that the flesh produces. There's a commitment that says, listen, whether this is hard or easy, I'm going to endure. I'm committed to this. I'm in it. I'm going to make it to the end. You don't let the frailty of the short-term emotion drive the situation. This is actually a point. The point I just made about emotions not driving you, it's actually not in the text. But it's not in the text in a way that it's all through the next section we're going to read. It's the thing that's not mentioned. But when you read this, I pray every one of you says to yourself, how is he not freaking out right now? That's what you should be thinking as we're reading about Daniel actually in the lion's den. You should be thinking like, I would be losing my mind right now about this and this. And yet, when we read it, there's none. There's none of that. In fact, you're going to see some great calmness come out of Daniel. And I hope you've thought about this. Like, how could he react this way? It's commitment. He was already committed. Okay, whatever the Lord wants to do. I know what I'm supposed to do.
You've been listening to Believing the Word, a ministry of author and pastor Dan Shunk at Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Pastor Dan has been teaching through a series in the book of Daniel. We'd love to get connected with you and hear about how God is working in your life through this teaching program. You can reach us by phone at 717-500-1102. Again, that number is 717-500-1102. You can also check out our website at cchambersburg.org, where you can learn more about the ministry of Calvary Chapel Chambersburg and find our chapter-by-chapter messages. If you're in the Chambersburg area, we'd love to have you join us Sunday mornings and Thursday evenings on 5121 Coffee Avenue. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back with more from the book of Daniel. But until then, this has been Believing the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk.